Hello, everyone. This video is going to be about mass consensus and its role in politics. This video is not going to be structured really or ordered, kind of like my last video. I'm just more so going to be rambling until I reach the point that I'm trying to get at. And I think I'll probably end the video there. Um, Something that I take problem with when it comes to a lot of movements and political ideologies is the belief that mass consensus is needed for said ideology to succeed. And sometimes that is the case, but oftentimes it is not the case. And I want to explain where exactly, like the exact, you know, cases in which I would say that mass consensus is not needed. Um, One thing I would say is that, for example, right on this channel, I've covered Pan-African related topics numerous times. Um, and I've noticed that a large percentage of Pan-Africanism slash Black nationalists, or just people in that general sphere of politics, tend to think that you're going to need a widespread movement across the continent, just across, you know, the Black world, period, for it to succeed. But not only is that unrealistic, I would also say it's potentially dangerous, right? To want and to expect that. And the reason why this becomes dangerous is because first thing first, good luck getting diverse sets of people to agree upon one thing. Humans by nature are tribal. We tend to focus on, well, some of us, a lot of us tend to focus on smaller, more immediate things. So let's take Nigeria, for example, right? You will have a Fulani, no, you'll have a Yoruba, an Igbo man arguing over who has more power in Nigeria, right? Who controls more institutions in Nigeria. But in reality, neither of them really have any true power in their own nation, right? When their government is corrupt and full of sellouts who will bend over backwards for the West or for whoever else. And so, like, when you realize that, right, that you have no true power in your own nation, it makes no sense to argue with someone who looks just like you, right? Who may have a different culture, they may speak a different language, maybe they have a different religion, but for the most part, they're basically the same as you. I'm talking about racially wise. But the thing is, most people are so, how do I say, intellectually deficient, they don't realize this. Or if they do, actually getting them to do something about this, it's hard, if not just impossible, right? Because they think, well, I can't challenge that. Talking about, the West in this case. I can't challenge the West. I can't challenge that. So the best thing I can do is I have to be better than my neighbor. I have to overcome my neighbor. Something that we have here in Black America, where some people, instead of getting rich and improving their neighborhood, right, they will get rich, go back to the hood, and build a big house there so everyone can look at them. See, like, look at him. He made it out. He came back. Now he's flexing on us. You get what I mean? It's a very low way of thinking. And so this is the point I'm trying to get at. Too many people are like this. And so in the case of Pan-Africanism, you can't rely on mass consensus, like an overwhelming amount of people to just get up and say, yes, that's what we need. We need to unite the continent. We need to unite, so and so as Black people. Don't rely upon that. You're not going to get that. What you need is a decent sized block of people, right? A group, a coalition of people who have the know-how and have the means and the resources to get what needs to be done, to get what needs to be done. That's what you need. You need to form an economical block of people who have the skills and who have the resources to get what needs to be done. But you cannot rely upon mass consensus. And sometimes, the masses do come in handy and they do us right. It does happen. I'm not going to pretend like this has never happened. But it's something that you should be sitting back waiting for. No, you should. I would like to say, if you look at the leaders in the AES, right, the Alliance of Sahelian States in West Africa, you will see the success they're enjoying today is something that did not come from mass consensus. Assimi Goïta in Mali, Ibrahim Traore in Burkina Faso, Abdulrahman Chiani in Niger, they didn't sit back and wait for their people to put them into office. They didn't sit back and what's the word? You know, get their people's consent of whether they should take power or not. These are all military men, and they just did it. They just did it. They had the means to do it, or they had the means to do it, and they took advantage of that. So if you want to get something done, get the means to do it. Get the people with like minds to do it. Get the resources you need, and get the money. Simple as that. And this is not necessarily a call to This is not necessarily an endorsement of military force or of coups or of anything. But I'm just saying, you cannot always rely upon voting and protesting and just uh, getting the word out where you just say, well, one day the people will rise up. If we were relying upon the people, right, and solely upon the people, will we have the AES today? Would we? Likely not. Likely not. The French multinationals would almost definitely still be in that area, raping and pillaging, right? The French would still have military bases throughout that area, being inefficient and stopping JNIM and stopping all the other groups there too. They're not the only one there, right? The point I'm getting at is that sometimes you must take things, right? You must stand up and you must grab it. Just simple as that. Just simple as that. Um, there's nothing wrong with having mass amounts of people on your side, but there needs to be a core of decision makers who are guiding, right? Who are guiding uh, the future of the movement. I'm writing something down, right? Who are guiding the future of the movement, right here. Okay, you actually you can't see y'all can't see that. But it says decision makers, masses. We need people at the top who know what they're doing, who are sending the message down of what to get done. That's what you need. And this is best seen in places like China. A lot of times, I'm noticing now, like with the rise of China, a lot of people are starting to, praise China, and its accomplishments over the past, I don't know what, uh, I guess you could say 100 years, right from the century of humiliation all the way till now, what we have today. And I'm a big fan of Chinese history, and I definitely think that China's transformation is one of the most remarkable in human history. It is certainly one of the most remarkable. But I think the problem is we typically don't really acknowledge how China became China, right? A lot of people, and I'm really still talking to like the more Pan-African crowd, they want to wait for things. And it's like they don't seemingly realize that the China you have today, formed through the very opposite of waiting. It was a very proactive thing. The CCP under Mao Zedong didn't wait for, Chinese unification. They mowed down all the warlords in China. All right. They used military force to consolidate Chinese rule, to consolidate their rule, their party's rule. Um, they annexed parts of Mongolia. They annexed Xinjiang, East Turkestan. They annexed Tibet. You know what I'm saying? This wasn't a kumbaya, let's all get along, peaceful movement. What China is today is the proper, no, what made China what it is today is the proper use of force doctrine. whenever Mao Zedong was walking along the long march that lasted a year, right? Because he wanted to encircle his enemies. I forgot which warlord faction he was fighting with, but he would oftentimes recruit mass amounts. He would recruit a good portion of just Chinese peasants who believed in his message, who also believed in communism, and believed that he would be best for China. He was very successful at that, and so he was able to replace any military losses or just losses he sustained. Just from disease or just starvation along the march. But and that's good. That's good. Obviously, you want mass amounts of people to be able to resonate with your message. But but these average everyday folks who he was recruiting weren't decision makers, and that's good because I'm sure he knows. Even though communism is all about establishing a classless society, even he knows that intellectually class still exists. There are classes of intelligence. We're not all the same. We're not all the same. Intellectually, we are simply not all the same. And he knew that, right? And so these are, I guess you could say, petty enforcers of what needed to be done. These are petty enforcers, right? These are soldiers. These were whoever else, but they weren't decision makers. This is why you see, even though communists talk, and they endlessly talk about establishing a classless society, very rarely when they get into power do they do things democratically. I mean, you have the Soviet Union, you have the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia, you have the CCP in China, and I'm sure there's many other examples you could go and look for, where whenever these people took power, the communists, even though they're all about we the people, very rarely did they actually consult the people on what to do because they understood that a lot of people are just dumb. They're just dumb. And if they aren't dumb, they just don't care. They have a deep sense of apathy. And the worst type of person you can run into is dumb and uncaring because now you have a mixture of the two. But they understood this. That a lot of people just don't care. And you ask them like, what don't they care about? Anything, just anything. They just don't care. Maybe they don't care about the future of the nation, the future of your people. They just don't care, right? They just want to survive. Or you have some who do care, but they don't have the proper intelligence to really understand what's going on, right? We can go back to like what I mentioned with tribalism, you know, with amongst black people, right? So you have some black person who gets rich, moves out of the hood. They're not thinking, well, let me go back and improve, where I came from. Some of them, they'll go build a basketball court and they think they did something. Wow, amazing. Thank you so much. It's like there's a trillion of those across Black America. And the reason they do this is because some of them don't care, but a lot of them just genuinely don't understand how you develop a community and make it better. They don't understand that. And they always like to just jump to these endless excuses. Oh, the white man this, the white man that, oh, the white man. And there's some validity to their complaints, but the white man can't be everywhere at once. Okay, he can't be everywhere at once. Um, unraveling your plans. A lot of times they just have nothing of value to offer because they're mentally stunted. And this is what happens when you're dealing with peasantry. And peasantry nowadays comes in many forms. There's rich peasantry. There's rich peasantry. There's people who have all the money in the world, but mentally they're a peasant because it's as if they have nothing, right? They're so uneducated. You would think that they're poor because you're thinking, well, if they came from nothing, I can kind of understand why they're acting like this because they just don't know better. They haven't been educated on the proper way to do things. No, no, some of them they have enough money where they probably attended a decent enough school, a decent enough university slash college where they should know better. They should know how to behave on a more sophisticated level, but they just don't. They just don't because really what it is, it's a lack of virtue, and a lack of virtue oftentimes leads to a lack in intelligence. So I say this to say, if you want your movement, if you want your political entity to move forward, you have to ask yourself the question of, do we need mass consensus? Do we need mass amounts of people to agree with us to begin with? And if you do belong to one of those groups where you need that, then obviously this message is not for you. But if you don't need that, if you can really come to the conclusion that you don't need it, then just don't worry about it. Don't sit there and because this is one thing that people oftentimes they'll realize this what I'm saying right now, but they'll still ask themselves, why don't people do this? Why don't people do that? And once again, I'm gonna go back to black people. So many black people say, well, look at how we've been treated in this country for the past however many centuries. Why haven't we done something about it? Why haven't we gotten back at these people? Why haven't we done this or that? The real question is, why are you expecting them to do something? Like, really, why are you expecting them to do something? Most people by nature are submissive. They're just going to submit to the power that's in place, right? Because the problem I have is that a lot of black people talk about the situations, in the black community. They say, why are black people so submissive? Truth is, no race is more or less rebellious or submissive than the other, or at least not by any biological means, right? It's all cultural. All of it. It's all cultural. I don't believe in bioessentialism at all. It's all a bunch of nonsense. Anyone who believes in bioessentialism basically just they haven't studied the basics of genetics. Um, on a broad sense, we're literally all the same. All races, we're all the same. There's very little difference between us. And what difference there is between us is just physical and it's not mental. But the thing is, you should never expect, and unfortunately, this is unfortunate, but you really shouldn't expect people to do what's right. Um, and so I take deep issue whenever black people ask, why don't we do something about the way we've been treated? My question is, if you feel like that, go talk to like-minded black people and just leave it at that. But the average Pookie and the average Ray Ray in the hood, right? Why are you expecting them to do something? People don't just get up and do things. You think about any movement in history, it's led by people who are visionaries, right? Who had an idea of what the world should look like. And they managed to galvanize enough people, right, into doing what they wanted to be done. But very rarely do mass amounts of people just wake up simultaneously and realize what the issue is and act independently. It very rarely happens. Like with the whole idea of like a color revolution, right? Something where, you know, something that the US government used extensively during the Cold War, where they used NGOs to destabilize and to do regime changes in foreign countries. You even look at situations like that. They played upon pre-existing feelings within the masses, but they had to go out their way to galvanize people and to rile people up, right? To where they had to do something, right? But they knew that if they just left it on their own, right? If they just left things on their own, that people weren't going to just do something about it. You had to make things so, how you say, dire, right? That your desired political outcome basically became inevitable. But it's not wise to just wait for people to do something. It's not wise. People have to be galvanized. This is the case amongst all races. And I'll expound this in a future video. But for now, this is it. Thank you for watching.